The Diary of a Certified Psychopath. Off the crank. Ships that pass. As balmy a breeze as has thus far whispered around the high-walled hedges of Hampton Fort Maze, at least since this otherwise anticlimactic spring began weaving its fruitful spell into the seeds and bulbs that lay buried beneath beds of dormant soil and breathed life into the brittle limbs of our sturdy wooden wiseacres, who stood in solemn silence, offering affordable nest space to parents preparing for another precious clutch, whilst patiently awaiting Mother Nature's green fingers to, once again, temper their tender winter scars with Corinthian cloaks and mossy band-aids. A little later, barely half a kilometre from home, pedalling peanuts down a Strava segment known as Jibber Jabber, with one perishable plastic pannier loaded almost to snapping point with provisions dangling precariously from my magic carpet's left flared horn, I pulled up cautiously behind a commuting mountain biker, evidently fresh from their graveyard shift. His loose-fitting puffer jacket billowed in response to every turbulent onslaught launched by a still clement but increasingly headstrong beast from the east, rather like a kitesurfer's parachute. This shady hooded figure was working equally hard whilst piloting his beloved flat-barred bone shaker, which by aid of humanity's incandescent elan, I could tell sported that natural powder-spattered paint scheme of speckled beige and marbled brown, typically accrued from hardcore trailblazing and a subsequent hosepipe ban. After mulling over whether this intrepid peddler's aero-deficient attire would generate greater drag than a co-op carrier bag, I decided not to risk the humility of an aborted pass, instead keeping a low and narrow profile in his generous slipstream till within safe sight of my front door, before darting right into a faceful of turbulent resistance and huffing past at high cadence, trying all the time to appear in perfect control and avoid eye contact. With more than a tandem's gap between us, I then eased left to repay my overdraft for all of half a threshold minute. One planetary pirouette later. "What makes you happy?" inquired a bold blue slogan on the back of one pedestrian's fuchsia-coloured hoodie as I crawled across Ferry Footbridge through a slow-moving tailback of human traffic, giving wide berth to a busking saxophonist and his stash of promotional CDs. I pondered for some moments, then concluded that the ornate arrays of rose-gold daffodils that I'd observed earlier whilst circling Shell Springs roundabout at least made me contemplate smiling. Though this brief swell of positivity melted away, like dappled sunshine dissolving into the River Ada's silty banks, when I remembered the gender non-binary root ginger, free-range kitchen roll and ethically crushed pecan nuts that I'd somehow neglected to hand forage from the flourishing shelves of Max's Bare Naked Foods. Any meticulous metrical analysis of this wholly practical Potter would be next to meaningless, especially when one's wearable cardiologist is suffering from periodic blackouts, though any perceived palpitations that might have occurred throughout 90 scrupulously deconstructed minutes were likely caused by the shock of witnessing Dr. Loomis's painfully cautious learner drivers in their accredited school's souped-down Renault Clios being repeatedly outpaced by an assortment of kick-scooterists, rollerbladers, and one power-waddling herring gull around Shoreham Beach's central velodrome. At a casual glance, I'd also guesstimate that sufficient average wattage was generated to power one of Heathrow Airport's smaller departure boards for the duration of its recent electricity drought.